Greetings. I'm Dr. Mari Castle. Thank you for joining in this series that I'm offering called Breathwork and Embodied Consciousness. And thank you for listening. If you got a chance to check out my Breathwork and Nature series, where I was out west in Mount Shasta and Cape Perpetua in Oregon, it was just such a delight for me. But now I'm getting into more back to the Jungian aspects of our personal development, of consciousness in general, and bringing the breath into that so we can really experience embodiment of our full potential, of our aspects of wholeness, of being conscious, awake, aware human beings, because I feel like that is what the world needs more of. And if you're new to this series, you may not be aware that I have a background in transpersonal psychology, is my PhD, and also that I've been working with breathwork for 20 some years and find it one of the most powerful healing modalities that we could entertain in our lives. There's a lot of ways to do that through even yoga, through just conscious breath, through all different kinds of breathwork techniques. And then there's the holotropic breathwork, which I've been doing for 25 years. And I'm a facilitator of that. And I host workshops quite regularly in my area, but also I travel and host workshops too. I various retreats. Well, I also found that through the holotropic breath work, I became aware of so much more that was put kind of before me, and a way to assimilate it and understand it. And then that's where I found Joseph Campbell's Mythology, Carl Jung's, individuation process, and all these different concepts, and put them together. I teach a class called The Power of Myth and Archetype. However, now that one's coming up again. I will be teaching that. I have another round coming in the fall of this year, and that will be on my website. If you're interested, you can sign up. That will be in November. But what I'm doing here is bringing the breath into it and bringing it more into your personal experience of what happens when we start to assimilate these various concepts. If we think of myth and what that brings to help us feel guided in our journey of development, of becoming whole. If we think of, like I said, breath work is so powerful. And then if we think of the aspects of archetypes, so I talk about Inanna, the ancient goddess. It's also a myth, but I bring like how her story can really be a map or a blueprint for us to recognize. Sometimes it's our shadow aspect that we recognize. Sometimes it's hearing a call that we think, why would I do that? But yet, what that can bring, myth shows us that, brings us kind of to the bigger, larger perspective of what is possible. And in that way, I think we become more conscious human beings, more awake and aware, and able to participate in this great unfoldment of transformation that I feel like we are going through. Human beings are going through what I would call a recalibration, and that could be a rebirth. So, breathwork is necessary in the aspect of birthing. We want to make it as easy as possible, right? Really go with it, allow it to happen organically is the idea. So as I talk about this individuation through embodied consciousness, I invite you to breathe with me. Stay with your conscious, intentional breath. I'll remind you from time to time. Here and there through the series, I may have a specific technique that is good for you to uh, correlate with the subject matter. Could be in various spaces of our body. I like to talk about the lower abdomen, the heart space, and the head center. So we'll be getting into that. But for today, I just want to have you breathe with me. Give you a couple of cues here. And if it feels good, lower your shoulders, expand into your belly, but be conscious and intentional. And notice the movement in your breath so that you're bringing coherence to your breath, your body, and your mind. All three together are coming into coherence when you just breathe intentionally and you're aware of the movement in your body. So I'm going to just point out that really embodied consciousness and breathwork is, to me, I have this kind of underlining foundation of individuation from Jungian psychology. If you're not familiar with that, I'll try to keep it simple so that you understand. Sometimes the words get, lost, but I like to keep it simple. Like I said, easy language that assimilates, resonates, and you are able to understand what it is that we go through. And maybe it's something that you're already going through and you don't even realize that you're in the middle of this individuation process. I mean, think about it. Most of us spend our lives trying to fix ourselves. We think if we lose the weight, find the relationship, get the promotion, heal the trauma, or meditate enough, do enough breath work, we'll finally feel whole. But what if nothing is wrong with you? What if what you're experiencing is actually a call toward becoming more fully yourself? Jung calls this process individuation. I call it coming home to yourself. So have you ever found yourself wondering, why am I stuck? Why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Why do I feel disconnected? Why am I always anxious? Why am I exhausted? Why do I know what I should do, but can't seem to do it? And yet every day, if we realize we can react or respond, we can contract or open, contract. We can pay attention to our body mechanics, our body language. And we remain unconscious or we become aware. It's as simple as that. And, we can repeat patterns, right? Consciously, or we can create new healthy habits too. So that is evolution. It's just natural. It's what happens. We don't even realize it. But when enough people wake up, become conscious to choose, to decide, to live in their sovereignty rather than to follow or turn the head, that's when humanity evolves. And yet, despite our efforts, something continues to call from beneath the surface. It's like a longing and a restlessness, a feeling that there is more than life is bringing us, that what we've been living. And Carl Jung believed that this longing was not a sign that something was broken. It was evidence that something deeper was trying to emerge. He called this process individuation. Again, the lifelong journey of becoming who we truly are. So for me, that journey has unfolded through the breath, through mythology, through altered states of consciousness with the holotropic breath work, and also a lifelong relationship with the ancient goddess Inanna. It's been about 25 years, almost the beginning of when I did the holotropic breath work, she emerged in my consciousness. And I was fortunate to find something about her to understand what I was experiencing. And I came to realize that individuation, Jungian individuation, I followed into that, like I said, with my studies in transpersonal psychology. It's just not merely a psychological process. It's deeper than that. It is a whole unfoldment. And when we use breath, myth, relationship, shadow work, and conscious awareness, we gradually remember who we are by saying we come home to ourself. We come whole not by transcending our humanity, but by inhabiting it more fully. Individuation is not a destination. It's not a completion. You're done. Put that aside. It's an embodied journey of becoming, fully embodying you in your body, but also in your representation of who you are, in your internal process, that vertical ascension that can happen. And when we consciously participate in that journey, we become participants in evolution itself. Like I said, it's about being embodied, and the body then remembers. The psyche, which is also embodied, speaks through symbols to us. The breath, I hope you're staying with it, right? Conscious, intentional breath. Breath becomes a bridge. And then consciousness itself is continuously inviting us to a larger expression of who we are. It's almost like a spiral going out, coming back in, going out, coming back in, getting bigger, continually inviting us into a larger expression of who we are. And the invitation is to become more fully human in our divine nature, connected to the cosmos, connected through our heart space to others, connected to planet Earth. And we are not intending to ascend somewhere, right? Come out of ourselves by becoming increasingly conscious, embodied and present, aware in the life that we are already living, not escaping. Right? We're not doing meditation to go off somewhere. Doing it to really be present with all that is. And this journey of the individuation begins with a call. This call can be anything. It could be grief. It could be the loss of a marriage. It could be an invitation to temptation. It could be an illness. If you think of, I want to just go back to the temptation, right? Because this can happen. This can be a call that Jesus was in the desert and he was tempted by receiving all the riches he could ever desire. He resisted that temptation. So that too becomes a way of crossing the threshold. Any particular call, when we act and listen and move forward into it, because at first, a lot of times it can be resistance. That's very common. Me, I don't know, but there's that doubt, right? That happens. And then once you are ready to let go the self-doubt and move into that journey, then you are crossing the threshold. And this is where we'll begin in the next episode with the call. The call to journeying in throughout the individuation process and embodying consciousness. And we'll look at Inanna's myth to help understand what that could be like or what that means. And we'll recognize the shadow aspects and how putting the spotlight on these areas that we aren't necessarily aware of or not paying attention to, or that are just screaming at us to take a look, because that's what happened when we become more aware of this, then it surfaces for us to take a look at. And we'll really dive in with different aspects that can be related to the what is considered the Joseph Campbell's a monomyth. So there's that threshold of going into the beginning of transformation, and we're met with allies or enemies. And then we get to, working through different challenges and temptations. We come to this state of like being in the underworld, or maybe even a dark night of the soul. It feels like isolation. It could feel like a death of old identity. And then this becomes also a revelation. It could be the rebirth of your new self, letting go old identities to rebirth to that new self, that, maybe that job that you want to let go of for years, but you just didn't have the courage to do it because you have to support yourself or others. Makes sense. Now you're here and you're ready. And then you have that rebirth. And there's when the transformation happens, that aspect of atonement, which is uniting the polarities, uniting the opposites, and then getting the blessings, right? Through then coming back through again the threshold to that more fully embodied, conscious, aware, whole self, you are able to really reap the benefits of what all of those efforts of staying with it can bring, that you are finally able to, like the rose, finally coming to the bud, then finally opening, or the caterpillar, after all the time walking along, and then creating the um, the what is it called, the cocoon, and then slowly etching out a fully experiencing and embodying as the bright, beautiful, colorful, unique butterfly that flies, that lifts up. So that is the ideal experience. And we're going to talk about many different ways of how this can look. And like I said, using Inanna's myth, but also symbolism. So I hope you will join me in the next episode and stay with me through this series. I'm excited about it. And I also just want to mention that I have a website, thegoddessbreath.com. I have different workshops. I'll have the Power of Myth and Archetype class that I'm teaching in November posted there as well. And may you have a beautiful, blessed day, and I will see you in the next episode. Remember, stay with the breath. Conscious inhales and exhales. Do that anywhere. Blessings. Be well.